Good morning and
Good,
welcome to
good.
BlackUSA.News Morning Show. Patrick Gonzales, top of the morning to you.
Top of the morning to you, Donnie Glover.
We are blessed, ladies and gentlemen, to have with us an icon in the world of politics. I was thinking to myself, Patrick, I remember as a little kid collecting campaign signs when I lived on Moreland Avenue. You're talking about 1975. And down in my basement, I remember a Dwight Pettit sign and
Right.
Mitchell's and Troy Braley. I remember all of that. And fast forward years later, that's all I think about is politics. But you've got a story too. When did you first get interested in politics, Patrick?
Well, I think I first got interested in politics, Donnie, probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and my mother took me out campaigning for John F. Kennedy. I certainly, by 1975, was very interested in politics. I still had to finish my higher education, but yeah, I think probably my whole life I've been interested in politics.
Where'd you grow up, Patrick?
Well, I was born in Norfolk, moved to New York, then moved around a couple of times, and then I settled in Annapolis in the mid 1960s.
Born in Norfolk?
Norfolk, Virginia.
I worked at a restaurant. We served a dish called the Crab and Shrimp Norfolk.
Okay, yes.
Now I heard that little story, but we can't even say that on air, can we?
Probably best not to.
Okay. All right. So Annapolis, at what juncture, when was it official that you are a political pundit, a political,
Probably about 1985, 1986.
what was going on then?
Well, I went to the University of Baltimore, graduated in 1981 with a degree in political science, and a buddy of mine started a company called Mason-Dixon Research. And it was a polling company here in Maryland. And he started it in 1983. And then soon, within a couple of years, I was on board.
Do you remember the campaign?
Oh, do I remember? Well, the first thing I remember is the 1984 contest between Clarence Long, the incumbent congressman, and Helen Bentley, the challenger. And we did an exit poll for Channel 2. And that sort of got us on the map. And then we did a lot of exit polling throughout the 80s. For television stations here in Maryland and across the country. And then we started working with campaigns in the 1986 election cycle. So yeah, it's been quite a ride.
So how can you remain a nice guy in such a dirty business?
Dude, that is such a good question. I guess just at my core, I'm a nice guy. And I'm not, I guess I'm a little bit unique in politics. I'm not really driven by ideology. I never have been. So to me, I guess it's a strength. Maybe it's a weakness. I can see, both sides of an issue. I can see there's merit in the different arguments. So I don't know. How have I become remained a nice guy? I think that's probably for the Lord to explain at some time.
Well, we've had a lot of conversations offline, and I don't just say you're a nice guy for no reason. There's plenty of reasons. We've conversed at least over the past 15 years, and I always recall you being not just a kind person, but a big brother.
Well, thank you, Donnie. And I'd probably peg it closer to 20 years, but I'll accept your 15.
15, 20 years. And, last election cycle, we saw, and I had not seen this before, where Fox was, now you correct me, me, but it seemed like Fox was trying to engage you in retail politics.
Well, Fox hired me to poll on the mayor's race, the beginning of 2020. And we were scheduled to do probably 6 or 8 total polls, and we did 3, I think. And then COVID hit, and the election got changed, and the world shut down, and so.
But was that something new, different for you?
No, I mean, when I was with Mason Dixon, television stations, newspapers, they were our client. So, but it's been a little bit of time since I was hired by a media outlet to do a specific race. But this was a unique situation, and you know, it was the mayor's race in the city that I love, and the opportunity to poll on it several times to get a sense of how it was evolving. And we did our first one the beginning of the year, beginning of January, and then we did one at the end of January, and then we did one in February, and we were scheduled to do our next one, and then all of a sudden the world shut down. The primary got moved to June. It was scheduled for April, and so.
What were people saying back then
about the mayor's race?
Yeah, in the city of Baltimore. What was on people's minds?
Well, what was on people's minds was crime was the number one issue. They weren't satisfied with the incumbent who had assumed office from the council president seat. And I think early on, one of the things that, was kind of clear in the polling was that Mayor Young was going to have a tough time on primary day. And but there was just this high sense among the voters of Baltimore that they weren't really satisfied with what was going on. So,
any change? You see any change?
Well, with regard to polling, I haven't done anything. So since last year in the city of Baltimore, so how the voters are perceiving what's going on now, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you, people are angry. And especially with the last thing that happened that caught the mainstream media's attention, the whole Fells Point, they had a couple of shootings, some trash, some dirt bikes, and the mayor promoted a town hall over there. But by the time the meeting came about, I think somebody grabbed his ear,
right,
and said, "You might not want to go over there." They had some shootings in Fells Point, but in East Baltimore and West Baltimore, they got murders.
Right.
And they've had murders for decades. You ever did a poll on murders in Baltimore? What I'm getting to is it's almost expected in East Baltimore and West Baltimore. It's almost expected. And so if it happens anywhere near Fells Point or, necessarily non-black areas, not necessarily non-black areas, but, Fells Point, Canton, that's not East Baltimore, West Baltimore. What do you think? How do we change this? I mean, we get the same people, they say the same things, they get in there and nothing changes.
Well, Donnie, I am not a policy expert. I don't pretend to be. I do, you just said voters are angry. Well, and they were angry a year ago. How do we move the ball forward? I don't know. Tell me, what are some of your ideas? What do you think?
Well, instead of having the media highlight all that's wrong with Baltimore, this is a majority black city. And what I find every time I turn on the news, if you see a black person on the news, it's a murder. Generally speaking, the news is depressing to most black people.
Right.
If we didn't see it happen out front, then when we go to turn on the 6 o'clock news, we certainly will see it. It's just it's a repetition of negative news story after negative news story. And then if a black person does make it on television, they're either dancing or playing ball. And that's just not the full storyline of what Baltimore is about. You have business owners, lawyers, doctors, teachers. But what makes it on the news every night is the murders. We are a whole community, but the news cherry picks stories. Now, on the other hand, you know, when we seen crime in the non-black community, it's told in a different way. Whether it's a sheriff getting killed in Harford County,
right?
It's just the story's always told differently. Somebody trying to, what were they doing? Somebody had walked into Channel 45 with a gun, or they were mentally ill. It's just a different way of storytelling. So I think the media is the major problem with Baltimore.
Well,
personally.
Yeah, no, and I hear you, and not to put too fine a point on it, but you know, in the media, and today there are many different forms of media, but you know the old line in the media:
if it leads, it bleeds.
If it bleeds, it leads. And I guess one of the counterpoints are shows like yours and others. I mean, there's so many different opportunities. When you and I were growing up, there was. I was going to. Oh yeah, okay. Jerry Turner, remember Jerry?
Turner, Al Sanders.
Al Sanders, remember Al?
Maria Broom, Edie House.
Right. Okay. There was Channel 2, Channel 13, and Channel 11, and then they got switched on. But they were the three main ones, and then there was BFF came in the early 70s, I think. But it was UHF. I don't know if you could, but I remember in the early mid 70s, I couldn't get UHF stations.
You needed aluminum foil.
Exactly. And but anyway, that was it. And then at the national level, you had the main three, the big three, and that was it. Well, today we have so many different outlets. I think I have 2,000 channels on my cable subscription. You've got social media. So you've got different ways of presenting news today to counter what you're kind of describing as your dissatisfaction with the way many news outlets present the news. So,
but all of them call on you, Patrick, especially around election time. And I don't know if you've been busy lately, but you're about to get very busy, particularly with the governor's race.
Yes, we've taken a look at it, and I do suspect that things are going to get busier and busier as we head into 2022.
So what's it looking like? Explain to us what happens over the next 3 months, next 4 months. What happens? You get a phone call, Patrick, we'd like to know about this raise, and then I guess you help them shape the questions, or they'll give you their questions and
we work together. Yeah. I mean, I was sitting down figuring the other day, Donnie, in the 30 plus years I've been polling in Maryland, I've certainly polled in every county, all the major cities and towns. And I think I've done about over 90% of the legislative districts. Well, there are 47 legislative districts, and so do the math. I haven't done them all. There are a couple I haven't. I'm not quite sure. I don't think I've done 47, which is that district in Prince George's County, and maybe a couple of others. But no, people are going to start looking. My bread and butter is here in Maryland. Legislative races, county executive races, that kind of stuff. I haven't, over the years, I've done a couple of federal elections, Congress and stuff, but not many. Most of my focus is here in Maryland.
So when you look at this governor's race,
right?
Well, let's just get into it. On the Republican side, we know that the lieutenant governor is not running. Boyd Rutherford. We do know that Kelly Schultz has gotten a nod.
Correct.
I think there's another young man. I haven't seen him in a while. I think he's running on a Republican ticket. Didn't make much headway the first time. Now, on the Democratic side, it gets interesting. Is Peter, well, you got Peter Franchot. Is he a slam dunk?
Well, I don't think anyone's a slam dunk at this point, because in the poll we did last month, 41% were undecided. So I think in a race, and what we found was that Rashawn Baker, we had at 22%. Peter Franchot, the comptroller, was at 18%. Tom Perez was at 10%, and the other 5 or 6 candidates were in the low single digits.
Rashawn Baker was leading.
Yes, he was up by 4 points on Peter Franchot, and his strength was predicated from the African American vote in the Washington region.
In order to win the governor's race, I will say this to you, Patrick, right here on this show. Right. I think it's easier to win the governor's race than the mayor's race.
Well, I'm not sure I can disagree. I'm not sure. So you're saying it's easier for who to win the governor's race as opposed to Brandon Scott winning the mayor's race last year? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying yes. It's easier for anyone to win the governorship than it is to win the mayor of the city of Baltimore.
Okay. I won't argue with you.
Okay. All right. Thanks for agreeing with me. So as we have it, now you got Rashawn Baker. Now, I also wanted to say, does the rule still hold that in order to win the governorship, you have to win Greater Baltimore, Prince George's, Montgomery?
If you do those 3 things, you're well on your way to being the nominee. Yes. I mean, the 2 largest jurisdictions in a Democratic primary are Prince George's and Montgomery County. In third is Baltimore County. I'm talking about total number of votes. And then Baltimore City is probably 4th. So,
but Baltimore also has something that the other 2 don't have.
What's that?
We're the media hub.
Oh, you definitely the media hub of Maryland. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So when you think of those major television stations, the Baltimore Sun newspaper, as well as the other media in Baltimore, that boosts the importance of Greater Baltimore in any election, because whoever wins, they get vetted, if you will, through Baltimore media. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, but I would also submit that the impact that the Baltimore media has is much less than it was 20 years ago or even 10 years. And that's, again, because of the dispersion of other media forms. So it doesn't dominate like it did when William Donald Schaefer beat Steve Sachs in the primary back in 1986.
Tell me about that race.
We were involved in that race, and I guess my number one takeaway remembrance from it was that I met Steve Sachs a couple times. He was a nice guy, but that was never, ever, a competitive race based on the polling. I mean, William Donald Schaefer was the 800-pound bear. He comes in and he's got the political base of Baltimore City. He had the name recognition from being sort of a colorful mayor, and he just did it. That was just one of those elections where Steve Sachs, I think, ran a fine campaign, but it was just, Donald Schaefer was that strong a force. So
he was quite a personality.
Quite a personality.
He knew how to engage with most anyone. Heck, most of us still remember the trash ball campaign. He did a trash campaign, and that's where the old, pick up your trash, call a trash ball.
Yep. Jumping in the harbor with his Three Stooges swimsuit on or whatever it was. I mean, he was quite a showman.
Yeah, because I don't think I could stick any parts of my body in that inner harbor.
No.
Radioactive. But do we have politicians that understood as a William Donald Schaefer? Now, I was young, a kid, but I remember he catered to both communities, the black community as well as the white community. He knew he had to do something in both parts of town. He knew he could not ostracize himself from either part. I remember a lot of people holding him in high regard because his mother still lived in Evanston Village.
Right.
He would have a police car parked out there on Evanston Avenue, and everybody knew that was the mayor's mother's house.
Well, he certainly, from my earliest recollections of him, he was Baltimore through and through. My take on him was he cared about the whole city, not just one segment or the other. He cared about the whole city. He cared about all the people. And you know, Donnie, he was the type of guy that if he was driving to work or being driven to work and he saw a pothole or he hit a pothole, I mean, the first thing he did when he got in the office, because they didn't have cell phones back then, was call up Public Works and get out there and fix that pothole. I mean, he was hands-on. And I think, when we look back, I mean, he was Baltimore. That was his love. And I think by the time he got to Annapolis and spent 8 years there, I think he tried to do good for Maryland, did a lot of things. He loved going to Ocean City. So after he became governor, it became much easier to travel from parts of the state to Ocean City. But I think his heart was always in Baltimore. That's how I remember it.
So is Baltimore a Democratic city still, or do we have Republican leanings? I thought it was still 9-1 Democrat.
I would describe Baltimore as a Democratic city. I mean, I think, and don't quote me on this, but we can double check. I think on election day last November, I think probably more independents voted than Republicans. So, but still 85+% of the vote is Democratic. So, yeah, I would say Baltimore is a Democratic city.
Well, I got to share this with you honestly, Patrick. As a black man in Baltimore, it seems Republican to me, because all of the things that we hear the Democrats do, we are taught as black Democrats to hate Republicans. It's almost like somewhere in between the Pledge of Allegiance and the Lord's Prayer.
Right.
You're just raised in Baltimore to hate Republicans. That's what we're taught. Hate them. They're the devil. But Baltimore is 9-1 Democrat. And in the black neighborhood, we don't see any new schools, new development, supermarkets. Hell, it's like a damn plantation, Patrick. So I'm wondering, what difference does it make in Baltimore? What's democratic about it? If this is what being a Democrat is, seeing murders every night, maybe it's time to change parties.
Interesting comment, Donnie. I don't know what to say. It is the way it is. Baltimore, I love the city. I've seen it, evolve over 50, 55 years. I mean, as a kid, I used to love going downtown with my mother was a reporter for the News American. And so I'd go in at times to work with her and just go to different places and going to Little Italy back then, the restaurants as a kid. I was fascinated. And, I haven't graduated, like I said, from the University of Baltimore. And so I can sit here and say, yeah, it isn't like it was when I was there. And it's changed, but so have I. So I don't know, Donnie, you tell me what is a solution to what you're describing as what's troubling you about Baltimore?
Accountability. So let's go back to 1973. I was a little kid, about the third grade or so.
Right.
I remember hearing this talk about the lottery, the lottery, the lottery, the lottery, the Maryland State Lottery, money for education.
Right.
Patrick, over $15 billion has come through the Maryland State Lottery. Yet it was just a couple of years ago that we had a picture on the front page of the Baltimore Sun of a Baltimore City public school classroom with icicles on the windows.
I hear you.
I feel lied to. I feel my whole generation was lied to going back to 1973.
Dude, I remember when the lottery first came up. I was a couple years older than you were, getting ready to graduate from high school, and I remember thinking, I'm going to win that lottery. I'm going to win that $1 million, and I'm going to be set for life. But back to your point, accountability. Amen. I think, if you ask Patrick, who's always trying to remain positive, always looking at that glass half full, I think if I had one word that's so important to me that I think is getting short shrift, it is accountability, and it's across the board in this country. I mean, I think you're right, because you and I remember the lottery was going to take education to a new level. It was going to do so many, the money was going to do so many things. And as you said, since that time, the state has taken in, what did you say, 15 billion?
15 billion.
Yeah. And
they used to list it on Wikipedia, but I think I quoted it so much they took it down.
Yeah, no, exactly. So
we got a new football stadium, a new baseball stadium, but here in Sandtown, where we had 3 elementary schools, we now have 1.
Yep.
And Sandtown, for those who may not know, is in State Legislative District 44, considered with the worst socioeconomic factors in the state of Maryland, an otherwise wealthy state.
Yep.
So what kind of questions do you expect people to pose for the next governor of Maryland? We got to educate voters. Patrick, we got voters who don't know who their delegates are, the city council person, county council person. Can you help me educate voters? What do voters need to know?
Just quickly, I mean, that's always been in play. I mean, if 30 years ago, if we had asked a well-known politician, state senator or delegate, we had asked their constituents, who's your state senator? Yeah, I mean, you always had 30, 40, 50% that couldn't name them directly. But then when you asked, how would you rate the job so-and-so is doing as state senator, then it went up. So campaigns are about communication. Communication is a two-way street. I would like to think that the polling that we've done over the years has been to help inform our clients, our candidates, to better communicate. I would hate to think, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I would hate to think that somebody hires me to tell them what to think. I approach it with the thought that, okay, this candidate is going to be communicating with his or her constituents over the next year with regard to the primaries in Maryland. And what are the constituents thinking? What information can I give to them that helps inform their knowledge and their ability to communicate with their constituents?
Okay, Patrick, I'm trying to make this light. Have you ever had to tell a candidate, hey, you're not listening to me? Here are the results. I told you you shouldn't be doing that. You ever have candidates that don't listen to you and do the exact opposite?
Well, I don't know about the exact opposite, but yeah, but Donnie, I see. Shit. Hold on. I'm sorry.
So if you're just joining us, we're talking with Patrick Gonzales of Gonzales Research. He is well known in the realm of politics. He's been doing research. He handles polls. He can help media outlets as well as candidates get a better sense of what the voters are looking for. So come on with it, Patrick.
Yeah, I apologize. I knocked over the camera, and I apologize. But I approach it. This client is hiring me to give them information. I do it. I give them my best take on it, and ultimately, if they choose to go in a different path, that's their decision. So I do not spend a lot of time worrying that they're not doing it exactly the way I suggested they do it.
Have you ever suggested to a candidate to get a dog?
No. I hope I'm not that shallow.
Well, I learned at a convention once that, a lot of winning candidates have a dog.
Yeah, well, that's probably true, but they probably have other people that can advise them on dogs. They don't need me.
Have you ever had to tell a candidate to keep somebody out of their pictures, like an ugly relative?
No, not really. No, they again, most of my clients are smart enough to figure that out without my telling them.
So what has been a memorable scenario without dropping names?
Oh, I'm trying to think. God, I probably should have been prepared for that. I guess
What's been the most interesting one you've worked on?
Okay, and I'm not going to name names.
Okay,
but in 1990, I'm a young fella, and I ran my first campaign, and I won't say where, but it was a campaign for county executive in one of the jurisdictions in Maryland. And I was there with the campaign for basically a year before the primary. And the primaries back then were in September. So probably in October or November of '89, I came on and spent the next close to a year. And the lesson I learned was that, and basically I'm assigning the responsibility of this to me. If the election had been held at the bars of that county, then we would have won in a landslide. We spent way too much time doing what we enjoyed and not enough time out communicating with voters. So that was a good experience for Patrick to grow up a little and to recognize that, I got I got through a lot of schooling and stuff, kind of winging it by the seat of my pants and not probably applying myself quite as hard as I should have. And I could get away with it. But finally, it was a good life lesson that if you want to accomplish things on this earth, you have to work hard and you have to apply yourself. You can't just sit back and expect your good looks and charm to provide what you need.
So in this ever evolving, ever changing world, Patrick, do you think Bitcoin will play a role in future elections?
I don't even know, dude. You're asking the wrong. I don't even know I don't even understand Bitcoin. So I'm not saying it's good or bad. I don't have a clue what it is. So I mean, I guess if it hangs as a monetary unit or whatever it is, yeah, I'm sure it will have impacts in it's like asking me 25 years ago, you think this internet is going to have any impact on politics? Yeah, probably at the time said, nah, it's a short-lived fad. But anyway.
Well, answer it today. Does the internet impact elections?
In a big way, yeah, it does.
It can sink a campaign, or it can help one blow up.
Yeah, it sure can. It has a lot of a lot of power.
Oh, so we have this guy right here
Right.
He does a show Friday nights called Black USA Crypto News.
Right.
And so maybe tonight we'll ask him a little bit about those whether crypto. But I'll tell you something, you mentioned, what people are saying about the internet. Now, since you and I have last done work election-wise, there is a new gorilla. I don't know if it's a 600-pound gorilla, 800-pound gorilla, or if it's just a baby gorilla. But there's a new gorilla in the realm of social media. It's called, what's the thing? On the phone.
Snapchat? No, I mean, I don't know.
No, the phone call.
Oh, TikTok? No.
No, not TikTok.
Well,
They only have it on Apple, then you got to have Clubhouse.
Okay.
Even my dog is, okay, Clubhouse. Yeah, Clubhouse. So in the New York City mayor's race, national entertainers were endorsing this black guy from Wall Street, Ray McGuire.
Right.
And that was the first time I had heard of Ray McGuire on this new Apple platform called Clubhouse. But his opponent, well, one of his opponents, Eric Adams,
right,
and he's the Brooklyn Borough president, he's also running. It didn't take long for his campaign to respond in a similar way. What I'm getting to is, so the thing about Clubhouse, there's no recording. It's all in the moment, and once the conversation is done, it disappears.
Right.
But there are people on there with millions of followers. And so in this election, it'll be interesting to see the impact Clubhouse has. Put differently, will the winning candidate have a strong Clubhouse presence? And the election is in next week?
Well, I think it is. Yeah, next week. I remember Donnie back in 1988 on the presidential election. You had the Vice President George Bush, George 41, run against Mike Dukakis. And one of the complaints when the election was over was that there wasn't, the Dukakis campaign didn't respond quick enough, or didn't even respond to various charges. What's that?
Was that when Willie Horton came about?
Yeah, that was Willie Horton. And then we go to 92, and Clinton's the nominee, and their big thing was their rapid response team. No charge was going to go left unanswered, and they were going to do it as quickly as possible. But they had to, in 1992, deal with the news cycle of television. And so you had to, 5-hour response time was quick back then. Well, now with this Clubhouse that you're describing, it's immediate. So, and I think that's sort of one of the MOs of all campaigns, all successful campaigns these days. Get your point in as quickly as possible. And in this day and age, quickly as possible is immediately.
So has knocking on doors lost its value?
I don't think so. There's still that human contact. Now, we've had problems with it with the last 15 months, with the ability to, have that human to human contact. But I think as things return to normal, no. I think knocking on doors, and again, it depends on the election. I mean, knocking on doors for a gubernatorial campaign, numerically there are other ways to spend your time. But for a Senate seat, a delegate seat, a council seat, I still think it's the most effective way to communicate, because it's one human being to another, and that person, that voter, gets a sense of who the candidate really is. So, you go out during an election cycle and you knock on 5,000 doors. You can, in a delegate race or a Senate race or a council race, you can have a big impact.
Going back to the power of the internet, we're dealing with something now increasingly that I think could impact elections. Cybersecurity, election fraud, Russians hacking our systems. Do you see cybersecurity as a major issue?
Well, yeah, I do, and I guess as we become more dependent on technology and those kinds of things, yeah, the more opportunities there are for problems. But Donnie, you and I, again, we remember 20, 30, 40 years ago. It didn't take that long in the old days to count votes. I mean, if the polls closed at 8 o'clock, we knew by midnight kind of what the results were, and they had their system, and it was paper ballots, or it was whatever the mechanical system, and the people would take it from the polling place down to the board of elections, and they'd count them. So I guess it depends, with regard to cyber security and stuff. I guess it's a choice on, how do we want to do it? Do we want to perhaps have a system that, yeah, as quick as possible, as efficient as possible, but maybe employ some of the old techniques where it, might minimize, might mitigate somewhat the chance for those kind of problems. So we'll figure it out, I think.
Okay, so any predictions with the upcoming elections?
Yeah, the prediction, it's a year away, and I'm making no predictions at this point.
Let me ask,
yeah,
in the DC area, because
right.
I'm up here in Baltimore. I'm obviously biased from a geographical standpoint. What are people talking about in Montgomery County and Prince George's County? What issues, are on people's minds?
Well, I haven't been there recently, but I think not terribly different. And I'm talking about Democratic primary voters now. Now, those two jurisdictions have their own unique set of issues. For instance, the Beltway and the traffic and the different solutions being proposed to deal with it. They impact Montgomery and Prince George's directly. Now, whereas in Baltimore, you don't have quite the same focus on traffic congestion and issues from their beltway. So, but fundamentally, I think the issues of concern for Democratic primary voters are similar in there, with those kinds of exceptions I just talked about, and it's revolves around quality of life issues, the economy, education. The one thing that we that's was in play when we polled on it during the mayor's race last year, and this is just a crying shame, is that there is just such a high level of dissatisfaction with public education in the city that it breaks your heart. And like you were saying, the icicles in the school, so.
Yeah, we pay a school CEO an exorbitant amount of money. We pay a police commissioner an exorbitant amount of money, and if he gets fired, he gets even more money. But my problem is the lack of benchmarks. I'm a businessman, and so I'm not going to pay you $20 for something that costs $10. And if I am going to pay you 20, you're going to tell me why. You're going to show me why I'm giving you each dollar extra. I need benchmarks. I need progress. And we don't.
And I think, Donnie, you need accountability, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and whether it doesn't even, race doesn't even matter. I mean, we've got blacks in high positions across the city, and it means nothing if the work isn't being done. We just want the work done. I got a real question for you. Is Montgomery County, how is Montgomery County different from Baltimore City? And I'm talking about the mentality.
Well, I think, just off the top of my head, one of the biggest drivers of Montgomery County's economy is federal government. So that probably informs their thinking in a way where that isn't the same in the city. But as far as issues like quality of public education, I think that Montgomery County cares as much as voters in Baltimore City. So
Now, Montgomery County, what are the demographics there? Black, white, Latino?
roughly, and let me just roughly, probably in about 60 to 65% white, about 20% African American, and about 20% other, which would be Asian, Hispanic, in that. So it's a little bit different from the city. Like you said, Baltimore City is a majority is a majority black city, and
well, the reason I'm asking is Montgomery County has been producing some front runners. Francho,
right.
he's a Montgomery County person. Brooke Learman, her daddy was in Montgomery County. She's from Montgomery County, right?
I know she represents Baltimore City now, so I'm not sure if she was, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I think her dad was in politics. He was a delegate or something.
Oh, I think is her dad Terry Learman?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he was Montgomery County. He was like head of the party or something. That's right. I forgot about that. But not only that, you got out of the candidates, 9 candidates announced or thinking about governor. I mean, I'm trying to think, 1, 2. You got 3 or 4 of them that are from Montgomery County, so close to half of them. So
I was surprised to hear you say Rashawn Baker's name.
Why is that? He's the 2-term county exec of Prince George's. He ran in 2018, got 30% of the vote, and so that stuff matters. And what Peter Francho's got is he's been the comptroller for 15 years, effective fundraiser, works hard, goes around the
state. They don't know Rashawn Baker in Baltimore. That's what I found interesting.
No,
they don't know him, and for him to be leading.
But again, Donnie, he's leading because of his strength in Washington. So
I didn't know he was that strong there, because I don't know about you, Patrick, but I'm not trying to go out there and get kicked in my head. I don't like losing.
Right.
And I certainly wouldn't like losing twice.
Right.
Twice in a row. So if he's up, if he's going to have any kind of chance, I would imagine, Patrick, you never stop campaigning. You just don't stop campaigning. I think Kwesi Mfume has a strong reputation as a person that never stopped campaigning, at least in previous years.
Right.
You see cats in the last gubernatorial election, and then you don't hear from him. What's his name? What was the Democratic leader? Gonzales? We've not seen that guy. Have you seen him?
I haven't seen him, no.
But back then, they were shoving him down our throats, and we're like, hold up. We don't know this guy. We haven't seen him, and we haven't seen him since. That's not the kind of leadership that I think of when I talk with you. I heard you say knocking on doors. Nick Diadamo, the city councilman, he used to say that you have to knock on every door 3 times. Certainly not a governor's race. But if Ben Jealous is from Baltimore, as he says he is, I just imagine you would see him in Baltimore. I don't know.
You would. If I have time, I gotta tell you a quick Kwesi Mfume story. Back in 1986, when I was with Mason Dixon, we were hired by Channel 2 to do various exit polls. And one of the exit polls was the congressional race in to succeed Perrin Mitchell. And the candidates were well-known senator named Wendell Phillips, well-known state senator named Clarence Mitchell III, and a member of the city council, Kwesi Mfume. And the general consensus was that the winner was going to be either Mitchell or Phillips. And I'll never forget that night, down at the station, Channel 2 on York Road, and we dealt by phone back then, so they'd be processing the numbers back at the office, and I'd call in, and they'd say, okay, this is what we've got. And probably, I don't know, 7:30, polls closed at 8. They called and said, this is what it's showing. And I remember handing the results to the news director, and he looked at me and he said, "Are you sure?" And what our exit poll showed was that Kwasi Mfume was going to win that election. And it was just sort of, kind of so against the conventional thinking at the time. But anyway, and we certainly have heard from Kwasi Mfume a lot in the last 35 years, most recently in the 2018 election.
So, Patrick, with 10 minutes, I don't want to get you in any trouble. Certainly don't want to disaffect business. But who are the young lions that you see on the horizon? Who should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, I think we've just got to look at kind of the leadership in the legislature. You've got Bill Ferguson, who's now president of the Senate, succeeding a gentleman who'd been there for 30 odd years, been president of the Senate longer than anybody in the history of this country.
George Della.
Mike Miller. Talk about Mike Miller, yeah. You mentioned Brooke Lehrman. She's running against Tim Adams to succeed Francho as comptroller. You've got people like Corey McCrae, Antonio Hayes.
Prince George's, you got Calvin Hawkins.
Got Calvin Hawkins. You've got the county exec, Angela Also Brooks. Montgomery's got what's that?
Aisha Brave Boy.
Yeah. So I think there are a lot of them. I think there are a lot of people getting ready to succeed and take over for the next 20 or 30 years.
What keeps you doing politics, Patrick?
I just enjoy it. I love this country, and I love politics, and I love people. So I just, I enjoy it as much today as I did 30 years ago. And I guess when I stop enjoying it, I probably will stop doing it.
What were you thinking on January 6th?
Where was I? Didn't even know about it until January. I mean, I wasn't listening to the news that day. I don't even think I heard about it until the next day. So,
does it make you love this country as much?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Patrick, all I know is if there were black people storming that Capitol wall, they'd have caught some bullets.
Well, I hope not.
Patrick, as much as things have changed, some things haven't. I really thought that we have evolved, that we could evolve, but we've never addressed our original sin. But anyway, let's go on and do a plug for your business. There might be some clients out there. Why should a candidate hire Gonzales Research?
Well, first of all, I think the best answer I can give to that is for potential clients out there, go talk to other people in the biz. Don't ask me, because of course I'm going to tell you how good we are. Go out, talk to other people who've had experience with us. And if you want our best shot at giving you information about what your constituents are thinking, I think we have a pretty good track record of doing that. So I guess that would be my answer. But again, I encourage everyone to, not talk to me, but talk to those that we've dealt with over the past several decades and get their take on it. So I appreciate that.
Take back to your advisors that Donnie Glover will not be running for governor.
Okay. I will let them know.
They can relax a little bit.
I will let them know.
Good deal. Patrick Gonzales, how can people get in touch with you, big brother? And thank you for taking time on this beautiful morning.
Well, they can go to Patrick at GonzalesResearch.com to communicate with me by email. And they can call me at my office at 443-458-5885. 5034.
And
And
you
as
did that better than anyone. I mean, my God, people rattle that information off, and you know you're trying to catch it for them, and then you did it twice. You did it nice and slow. You let me get my stuff together. Hold up, let me just make sure we got it. Is that right?
perfect. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate you, Patrick, because you're a hell of a person, and you know you've always been a big brother, straight shooter, no guessing, decent family values. How is the family?
Family's doing great. You know, when we first met, it was daughters for me, and now it's grandkids to the tune of 5. And you know, one of the things you and I, since the day we first met, first talked, was, and it's kind of a common theme whenever you and I talk on the phone, and that's we each talk about how grateful we are. And brother, that's why I love you.
I'm grateful. I'm a granddad now too. I'm learning how to wear that.
Yep. Yep.
What's the difference between kids and grandkids?
Well, I guess the main thing, Donnie, not to put too fine a point on it, is that the grandkids go home when they start getting on your nerves. We didn't have that luxury with the kids.
Yeah, you've given me great advice too, and you know this is about patience. Children, I mean, my God, a child will test your patience.
But it's important. It's important. I'm being dead serious. It's important that we take time to reflect on the lessons our children can teach us. And then when we get to a point, the lessons our grandchildren can teach us.
Now, Patrick, you didn't tell me that a daughter was more brutal than a son.
I didn't have a son, so I don't know. But let me tell you one thing. My daughters, they're tough.
Yeah, man.
And that's just the way I want it.
But I didn't know they would be more challenging than the sons.
I don't have a point of comparison, but I would.
As men, we would give a little boy some toys, and they would go in the corner and play. Right. That's little boys. A little girl, you cannot just give her a toy and expect her to sit there all day. Oh no, it don't work like that. That's right. Their brains never stop. Never stop.
Nope. You got that right, brother.
They box you without boxing. Because they know how to hit you right there.
You're preaching to the choir, man.
They are not fair.
No, they're not. But life's not fair, Donnie Glover, a lot of times.
But you are. And thank you for joining us. However we can be of service, maybe we can bring you back as the election gets kicking off. We just want people to know that we know Patrick Gonzales too. Because
Absolutely.
Some of our competitors, they can't wait to bring you on. And, you know, we think a lot of,
you know, Donnie, you know, anytime I am more than happy to be with you.
Good deal. Thank you for your insight. And you have a beautiful day. We'll be back tonight at 7 o'clock with Black Crypto News and Kamal Hubbard at 7 p.m., 4 o'clock on the West Coast.
Thank you, Donnie.
You're welcome.